I know right now it's hard to see, but one day you gon' believe it. I was the first one counted out, now I'm the youngest one winning. My brothers tell me they see me, my sister saw me on TV. She said that you a superstar, but now I'm the underdog. She said that you a superstar, but now I'm the underdog.
Well, we have a special guest today. Want to welcome Brandon Saho. Welcome to the Underdog podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. I feel like I've been an underdog, so I fit the narrative here.
Absolutely. And it's been a big point of focus for us, since we got to know each other. Ran into each other down in Cincinnati sporting events and different things. And I started really following you close, Brandon. And when I think of mental health, I honestly think of you. I know I reached back and I think it was a little too, sensitive at the time. You were focusing on yourself, and now you've come out and are really helping others and hopefully helping save lives, which I think you're doing, definitely changing lives for the better. So really wanted to focus this season, Brandon, for the Underdog podcast is about being vulnerable, including myself, open, and as you talk about often, just really trying to help others. So I want to introduce your story a little bit. And sorry, this is going to be about you, not about me, but I know I'm doing most of the talking, but I think when you came out publicly and talked about, I have your tweet here and you posted some things. I'll just take some scripts, maybe not word for word, but you said, I've always felt alone. I don't know why, but I do. For the first time I thought about suicide, I was 14 years old. The last time I thought about it was 2 weeks ago. And this is relating back to last year. I'll never forget, or earlier this year, I should say. I'll never forget when my mom almost caught me with a knife in the kitchen my freshman year of high school. I had no idea that was just the start of my 15-year battle with depression and just the start of fighting for my life with myself. So I think that obviously starts off talking about mental health and now what you're doing. Can you kind of talk back about that journey, that when you're 14 years old, and kind of allow people to get to know your journey here?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that that's where I was, 6 months ago. I wrote a goodbye letter. I was ready to go. I started, just to be transparent, I started calling people one night saying bye. And it was, that's how close I was to either, drinking myself to suicide, or I thought about jumping off the Roebling Bridge before, or laying down in traffic outside the casino downtown. The battle had always been that feeling of being alone. I just never had really, I didn't know what that meant. Maybe it was, with relationship, with friends. It made no, or family, like it made no sense because I had so many great people around me. But it just started out when I was 14. I got made fun of my first year of high school, and I loved going to LaSalle and had a great experience. And I love going back now, but I just, you know how kids are, and it's even worse nowadays with social media and everything. I couldn't take it one day. And that was the first time I ever thought about it. I'll never forget, like I said in that letter, going into the kitchen and grabbing a knife and just sitting there contemplating, cutting myself. And my mom got up to just do something harmless, like go grab a drink or something like that. I put it away and went back to my room. And it's, but when I think back of like the last, I'm 29 now, the last 15 years, there's been, I don't know. There's probably been 20 times where I've thought about suicide, whether it be holding a pillow over my face or just, walking home after drinking downtown and thinking about just jumping because I was just so sad of, not having, that significant other in my life, or, the struggles of my career, the ups and downs. And that's another thing, which I'm sure we'll dive into, is that like, I'm not, some NFL athlete or some superstar on TV, but, you got to fake it for a lot of time when you're struggling. The news, when I worked on TV, it was at 6 and 11 every day, and I had to be there and put a good face on. And, that last 6 months, it was really, really hard to do that. It was easily the hardest year of my life, just with everything kind of crashing down.
Yeah. And now just to jump in, I would say watching you on TV, that's what I think really brought awareness and kind of opened my eyes, was like, wow, watching you and meeting you, I thought everything, you judge a book by its cover on the outside, you're like, dude, Brandon is killing it, right? You were, sports, UC's best year, the Bengals are going to the Super Bowl, and I know you're, LaSalle and Cincinnati guy through and through. And so I'm thinking, watching you, do all these reports so that you're, having the time of your life. I had no idea that you were the polar opposite. And so I think when you came out, myself included, I was really, so glad you did do that. I think, it takes a lot of courage and unbelievable transparency into your life. And that's not an easy thing to do, but I was shocked, man. I was shocked. And so, I think that to me, and I don't know, those that might, think the same way. And I think oftentimes when I see suicide, it is a lot of times the folks that I wouldn't think that do it. And so how do you beat that stigma, right? You talk a lot about it. Like, how did you come to that, breaking point? Or can you kind of talk through, like, you're doing all these coverages? I see smoking the cigar in Kansas City, right? I'll never forget you in the tunnel there, or, down in Dallas at the college football playoff. I mean, you were from the outside living the dream. And then, there was obviously a stigma saying, hey, you're a perfect, guy, and is, living the dream. And it was far from it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. It was the best year of my life. And I wrote this in that letter, best year of my life professionally. I was living my dream. Bengals were going to the Super Bowl. Like you said, I was smoking a cigar with Joe Mixon after the game. Players are hugging me like I had something to do with them going to the Super Bowl. It was some of the coolest moments of my life. But I had things going on. I haven't really opened up about it a ton, rather than just one sentence in there saying that, the girl or woman I thought I was going to marry, broke up with me. And, out of respect to her, I don't really want to go too deep into that, but that was one of the, biggest things. I thought I had found, that person. And then things kind of went south in the middle of football season, and it became a very hard thing for me to overcome. So, like, I was reporting on games and all excited on TV, and then I'm dealing with my personal life on the side, or texting or calling in between live hits with her, trying to figure out how I can save this thing. So that was the main continuous thing, was seeing, I mentioned being alone, and I thought that I was finally I thought I was done being alone, and I finally found, who I thought I was going to marry and all that stuff. And it just broke me. It completely broke me. I went from being on cloud nine, everything like lining up. I'd, moved back into my parents' house to save money to buy a house. I lost 25 pounds. I finally met this woman, and things were going great. And then all of a sudden, and, the Bengals and UC are having these crazy, amazing years. Like, life could not be more perfect. And it was the first time I was like truly happy with everything. And then slowly things just kind of started to happen. And like you said, like, you'd never know watching me on TV or seeing me at a game that stuff was going on. And I kept that, relationship pretty private from the public. But then if you caught me at a bar downtown on like a Thursday or Friday night, I mean, there was multiple nights where that was killing me. And I'm sitting there having a beer with my buddies, and all of a sudden I'm just crying. And that's where I got to the low, was the relationship failing. That was the number one thing. And then I had 3 deaths in my family, all within like a month and a half of each other. And, she was all there for all part of that, even though we were breaking up, which I was thankful for at the time. But like you talk about the Bengals run, I'm down there in Tennessee and Nashville getting ready to go live at 5:00. And at 4:50, my cousin Zach calls me and says, "Hey, I need you to sit down." And I'm like, "Okay, dude, like, I don't have time to mess around. Like, I'm about to go on. Like, what do you mean?" And he's like, "They just found Ben, our other cousin, and us 3 were like brothers. They just found Ben dead in Fairfield in his car. They don't know anything. We just found him dead." And, you know, he ended up having a heart attack at 32. And I mean, I was just in shock, and I went and did that one live hit at 5. And then I asked my bosses, like, please just give me the rest of the day off and I'll be ready for game day. And I was, and he was supposed to come down. He was supposed to come down to the game and meet up with me. And his best friend that was with him brought down his ticket to the front row. And I got to, you know, meet her. You know, I've known her for a while, but see her. And, you know, she like showed me his ticket and took a picture with her. And, you know, the Bengals won in a crazy way. And I think, you know, that was partially for Ben. So that's kind of just where my life was at. Those 3 months from like October to January into February, I'm bad at math, 5 months, whatever it was, maybe December. We started breaking up in December. And then, yeah, I just hit rock bottom. I went through like a month and a half of crying every day, being in bed until 1, stop working out, stop eating. I was depressed every day. I can't explain it. And I don't think I'll ever go back to that. And I wouldn't want to see it. It's just, you get to this point where you're like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do it. I've tried, you know, I thought I was on cloud 9 and had all life figured out. And I didn't. And so that's when I knew when I wrote that goodbye letter. And, the night that I started, George Vogel was the first person I called the next day. And I haven't told this story, I think, to anyone, but I was starting to cut my wrists in the bathroom. I was calling people to say goodbye, and he came over and sat with me for 3 hours. And, you know, he's like a brother to me. I love that guy to death. And the next day I called my therapist and asked to see how I could get checked into a mental health hospital, and did that. And then the next week I was in at the Linder Center of Hope, and that place saved my life. And, you know, it's a continuous process, but I mean, I've never thought about suicide since. I've been down some crazy experiences, whether it be, you know, changing jobs or things, you know, with that breakup that came up after that. But I've just been able to I think the original question, which I rambled, was changing the stigma.
Yep. And
it was like, when I was in these classes there, and, you know, am I allowed to cuss on this or no?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay. We're sitting there in class and they're talking about like men speaking out. And I'm like, I still want to be a bitch. And like the psychiatrist in front of like 20 people was like, that's the issue, what you just said. And I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like, and I've always been pretty public, and like I've spoken about depression before, but I just, you know, never did it on this level. So now it's like, when I got out of there and I posted that letter and I saw some of the reaction, so I think I posted that like my last week in the program. So I kind of like was able to turn the page by the end of the letter. I probably got like 1,000 to 1,500, not like comments or likes, they were like messages on Instagram, Twitter, email, Facebook. And I went through and I did my best to answer everyone for the next 2 days. And I got everything from, you know, like, whoa, like I had no idea what's going on, I'm praying for you, or, you know, I need resources, how do I get there, to like, I probably had 4 or 5 where people told me, hey, I was gonna, you know, do the same thing you were gonna do. And then I saw this letter, or I saw this tweet, and like I had some kid from Boston reach out. He's like, I have no idea, I'm a huge Patriots fan. One of my friends must have retweeted it, or I have no idea how I follow you. But like, that letter is what like made me want to call and get help instead of, you know, thinking about suicide tonight. And I'm like, holy shit. Like if little Cincinnati sports reporter me can help a couple people that are, you know, that close. I don't want anyone to go through what I went through and struggle like I did. I mean, I was a 2-month suicidal watch of just misery. And that's why I wanted to start the Mental Game podcast. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I just thought if I could get some of these football players that I know in the NFL, or coaches or musicians or actors, to come on and talk about experiences they've had, that's going to help 1 million times more people than me from that letter you started reading.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Incredibly powerful. So when you go, someone that's seeking help, you were able to find the resources, like I said, call the therapist, get into the Lindner Center of Hope. Can you kind of walk through like what that, someone that's listening or might know somebody that might send this podcast, hey, listen to Brandon's story. Like what resources would you recommend? Like maybe explain that a little bit of like how that really sounds like that was really maybe the turning point, like you said, like rock bottom, you hit it, then you go get help. George comes over, you decide the next day to call, then you get checked in. Can you kind of walk through like someone that might be, like you said, you don't want to be the stigma of being the bitch, right? Or whatever, like, hey, get over it, go get checked in. This is what happens. And then you can progress.
Yeah. I mean, it, like I just had no choice. I had to, like, I just knew I made it to the number one thing in that letter is like, I could never do that to my mom. Like I could never force her to have to grieve losing a child. That was like the number one thing for 15 years was I couldn't do it because of my mom. And, but it took me 12 years to ask for help. It took me till 2020. And then I just, I started going through my insurance company, looking up therapists to see, who was covered. And that's another whole topic of, I had really good insurance at the time, but like mental health is not covered a lot of the times on insurance, which is just crazy to me. And that's something I'm going to fight for eventually down the road. But there's a bunch of great like websites that seriously, if you just Google mental health resources, you'll be able to find therapists in your area. I don't want to, individually say different websites and get into all that, but you can find it on your phone easy. And it's the best decision you'll make. Even if you're like frustrated with certain things at work or in your personal life, and you're not even close to the level that I was depressed, it helps to just get it off your chest and get some advice and, just check in once a month or once every couple months. Now, if you're in a more serious state, I try to be an example of it where I was suicidal and thinking about suicide, and I was depressed for 15 years. And for the first time in my life, that hasn't come up in 6 months. I don't think it is. Crossing my fingers that, I stay on this path and everything. But like places like the Lindner Center of Hope or a therapist or you just gotta go for it. Like if you're struggling, you got to realize it yourself before it's too late. And that's everyone needs help, and that you just got to go get it. And if you, like you said, most people didn't know, people close to me knew I was struggling. They saw the stuff going wrong in my life behind the scenes. But like I say it all the time, like a text, a call, a FaceTime to your best friends once a week, like that literally can be life-saving. And so if you're not the one struggling, you never know who is. So try to reach out to people as much as you can.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know you shared about some things and details that a lot of people might not know. A lot of things people don't know about me is I actually saw a therapist in a while back, and in my early mid-20s, I really struggled. I never knew what anxiety was and what a panic attack was. And I found out, and it was miserable. And I'll never forget. And I had no idea what was the matter. And so I was the same way. I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, like leader of the company, this, that, and so on and so forth. The masculinity takes over the ego. And then I finally got to the point, and they were talking with my mom and my girlfriend, now wife at the time, and other people. And I was like, man, I felt just overwhelmed, and the best thing I did was to go see somebody. And I've made that private to a lot of people that I've learned that maybe have some challenges that really helped me, because talking to somebody is really, really important. So, I wanted to share that too, that I haven't often said or really don't say at all is, I did go see someone for quite a while, and it was super helpful, but it took a while. And then I reached out to a lot of my former teammates, and they were like, dude, I have anxiety and I had panic attacks, the same thing. And I had to, go talk to someone. I'm like, cause I felt like I was just alone. I was an outsider, like no one. And sure enough, there was, I don't know, almost of my class at Miami, of our 24 guys, even like the 10 guys I talked to, about half of them had some sort of anxiety, panic attacks, maybe depression. and it just opened up, man. I felt so much more, that there was, awareness, and I felt support. I didn't feel alone. And so I think there's a lot more in folks like yourself, and, Kevin Love has come out, a lot of sports and actors, actresses, it's really, I think battling the stigma is a huge thing for a lot of people. So anyway, I'm right there with you, brother. It's a battle every day, So, I try to keep that self-talk and positive thinking. And like you said, a lot of the negative media at times, not the media, but the content, I should say, messaging can get a little overwhelming for me. And it's just something to try to stay positive. In the Mental Game podcast, can you kind of go in? That's a huge positive thing to share. I know you released the guest list, which is star-studded to say the least.
Yeah, I'm so pumped about that. I mean, this is kind of my whole, not just like what I've been working towards my whole life professionally, but personally. Like I had no idea that, would I want to not go through the depression and suicidal thoughts and the shit that I went through the last year and that whole relationship blowing up? Yeah, I would love to take that away and take that pain away and not have to, think about all that. But what it did was it forced me to go to a mental health hospital, get myself right, and then realize, like I said, that there's a need for something like this. So the Mental Game was born organically. Like as a kid, I always wanted to like host a Tonight Show or be on SportsCenter. Well, this is kind of my version of doing it, taking two things that I'm passionate about, sports and mental health, and bringing it together. And it's been so cool. We've recorded, I want to say like 7-8 episodes so far. And like you said, we just put out the guest list where, I'm getting people that I have dreamed of meeting or talking to, whether it be, Kate Flannery, who played Meredith in The Office, or Heisman Trophy winner and NFL legend has a crazy story, Ricky Williams. Like I'm going out to LA in 3 weeks to record those episodes with them. But Joe Thomas from the Browns, he's a future NFL Hall of Famer, and Cincinnati Bengals defensive end Sam Hubbard. Him and I have been close for a long time. We were kind of the same era. I think I was 3-4 years older than him in high school. But Jake Fraley from the Reds, he almost thought about quitting baseball this past year when he was hurt and started seeing a mental coach. And I think these conversations are really going to open up, the conversation more and help break the stigma, because it's people that, I had people talk about mental health somewhat when I was in school, or like, I was, like I said, I, talked to a therapist, or I was, these different people inside the Leonard Center Hope that are great. And they really, really helped me, gave me some great tools. But I think the thing that's going to make this really a success is the fact that it's someone like me who is authentic about mental health and has really gone through the shit and was on the doorstep of committing suicide, along with some of these big name athletes that people love and are big fans of. And, mental health the last 2 years has come such a long way with breaking that stigma. I couldn't think of a better time. And I think the guest list is just going to get bigger and bigger and better and better. And we're going to figure out a way to incorporate, viewers and fans to be involved too, whether it be like, a talk back feature where they can ask, a therapist questions. We're going to have resources on the screen for people with a QR code, things like that. So if they are feeling where I was at, they literally can just scan their phone and find therapy online, or be able to call the 988, the new suicide prevention hotline, things like that. And like I said, I'm not afraid. I got really lucky, I worked my ass off, but I got really lucky to have some really cool jobs and assignments and meet some incredible people. But that's taught me how to network, and I'm not afraid to reach out to anyone. I reached out to Kid Cudi 2 days ago, and, his manager told me, like, loves the idea, doesn't have time for it right now. Thanks for reaching out. But like, at least I got an answer. Like, and that's the only way, I did the same with Ricky Williams, and, Ricky loved the idea and got back to me within like a couple of days. And now we're going out to LA to record it. Like it's genuine and it's authentic. And that is what's going to help a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, dude, that's love it. Love it. Love it. Appreciate, so powerful. I mean, really is. I mean, we talk all the time here about changing lives, and this is saving lives, and couldn't be any more critical topic, I think, in the world, especially now after a lot of different events that have happened in the last couple of years have put a lot of pressure in different ways on humans. And I think the mental awareness and, like I said, breaking the stigma, and you're doing just that, Brandon. So anything else? I know this was an incredibly powerful, I would say, knowledge nuggets and great episode. Is there anything else you would want to share or anything, any words of advice for our listeners?
I just think keep fighting, keep going. I have noticed that, I'm not alone. I've figured out a way to be happy with myself, and I was at the lowest of the low. I was ready to go. Like I said, wrote a goodbye letter. I thought about suicide on and off 15 years. And if I'm able to get out of it, I promise anyone listening can too. And that's the thing that's going to be, prevalent on the podcast is that, you're going to see people that you never thought had suffered from depression or anxiety or whatever problem they might have. And they're some of the biggest stars in music, sports, whatever it is. And they're able to get through it. Like if they can, you can too. And I just get help. It's okay to ask for help. There's medicine, there's therapists, whatever scale you're on, how depressed you are, how much anxiety you have, like just go get help, because, things like your podcast and mine and therapists and events, whatever it is, every little thing makes a difference. Like I said, a FaceTime, a call, a text, asking somebody to grab dinner or something, like it can change or save their life. So that's just my best advice. If you need help, go get it. And if you see someone struggling, just do something to help.
Yeah, no, couldn't be better said. And then definitely follow the Mental Game podcast. Brandon's Twitter. What's your Twitter handle? It's a must follow.
Oh, he's at Brandon Saho. So
pretty easy at Brandon. He's got a white checkered mark there. He's important in the Twitter world. But no, it's, more importantly, really good content. I love following you, man, and I'm so glad that we get to work together in a different way. I know I'm not as involved in Chatterbox, but super passionate. I love being part of your guys' team and help where I can. And I've always wanted you on the podcast, and we're able to check that box. And once again, thank you for being open, vulnerable. We're going to break the stigma. We're going to create more awareness. I can't wait to see where that podcast goes. And I know the best is ahead for you and in the squad, working all together. So appreciate you, brother. Have a good one. And I'm sure we'll see each other soon.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate it, man. I love what you're doing too. And I'm glad we're able to team up, not just me sitting there with a heavy ass camera on the court at UC games. I'm able to, hang out and talk and work with you too. It's been fun, man. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. I can't wait till we're sitting together watching a game and you're not working. So we're going to make that happen here sooner than later. Basketball season's right around the corner. If not football, we'll do, we got basketball. You got my word there. So.
Okay, baby.
Y'all didn't know me before all of this. Who would have thought it turned to all of this? Damn, I found a way with this. I got away with that. Had a way to wish I never cut it back. I doubled down on my bet. I told you that we alright. I kept it calm and collect. Never been scared of new heights. So y'all gon' believe the hype, and I'm gon' lead the way. I'm not no role model, but know my role mama. This ain't no piece of cake. I'm trying to keep my faith. I can't go cutting corners. It's about who want it more.